Begin, though, with the latest in the ramp up to the midterm elections. Last night, there were debates in some key races, and we have the big moments you need to know about.
Yeah, the race for governor is neck and neck in both New York and Michigan. Democratic incumbents Kathy Hochul and Gretchen Whitmer are each holding on to a slim lead over their Republican opponents. Candidates in both races faced off in debates last night. While in Pennsylvania, Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and Dr. Mehmet Oz took the stage together in one of the most highly anticipated debates this election season. The two are vying for an open Senate seat that could shift the balance of Congress. We are breaking down some of the high-stakes debates from last night. Ron Allen is standing by to talk about the New York debate. But first, let's check in with NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Mark, good morning to you. So yesterday we discussed Fetterman's health and whether that could be a factor in last night's debate. Early on, he addressed what he called the elephant in the room. Here's what he had to say.
And let's also talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush two words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up.
So Fetterman used that closed captioning system to read questions and answers in real time because he has auditory processing issues lingering after the stroke. So, Mark, how did he look throughout the debate? What's the reaction we're hearing this morning about any concerns that he's healthy enough to hold office?
Yeah, Joe, bottom line is he did struggle 5 months after his stroke. I think the question for Pennsylvania voters kind of going forward is, do they end up relating to that anecdote he talked about, like getting back up after adversity? A lot of people in this country have strokes and other medical situations, and whether he is able to relate or whether it does raise concerns about his health front and center. And Joe, just with less than 2 weeks to go, I just don't know the answer to that question. But he did struggle in his performance. He did mangle some words, as he ended up saying. But his campaign was very happy that he was able to prove that he could debate 5 months after having a stroke.
Let's get into some of the issues here. Oz and Fetterman addressed really a hot-button issue concerning Pennsylvania voters. That's abortion. Dr. Oz had this to say.
I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves. Contrast that with my opponent, John Fetterman, who on this debate stage said that he would demand federally mandated rules for all states they'd have to follow that would allow abortion at 38 weeks.
So he's previously been vague on whether he would vote on the proposed 15-week federal abortion plan. Was this any different? And really, local political leaders, that feels like it could be an opening for Democrats?
Yeah, Joe, he once again was vague when he was asked directly about whether he would support that Lindsey Graham 15-week abortion ban, yes or no. And he said, look, I'm against any federal intervention whatsoever, suggesting he'd be against it, but not necessarily 100% closing the door. And Democrats ended up pouncing on those remarks that he would leave abortion up to a woman, a doctor, and local political leaders. And even John Fetterman was able to interject at one point, like Doug Mastriano, the Republican nominee for governor, who, of course, is stridently anti-abortion.
Both candidates also discussed their support for the current President Joe Biden or the former President Donald Trump. So how did they embrace their respective party leaders, and will that hurt or help either of them at the voting booth?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure it helps or hurts at the voting booth, but they were asked directly about 2024 in a hypothetical situation if Donald Trump or Joe Biden end up facing each other again. And we ended up hearing Mehmet Oz saying that, yes, he's a supporter of Donald Trump and would back him if Donald Trump runs for president. And likewise, John Fetterman said that President Joe Biden would get his support if he runs, but that ultimately will be President Biden's decision if he seeks another term.
Mark, while we have you, let's touch on the governor's debate in Michigan between the Democratic incumbent, Gretchen Whitmer, and Republican Tudor Dixon. Both candidates discussed school safety, which has become a major issue for voters. Let's listen to that.
I would like to have armed security at our schools. I would like to make sure that we have a one entry point. I would also like to implement some of that plan that talks about how to identify a child that struggles with mental health, that might be considering self-harm or harming someone else.
We've been trying that for 30 years. It's not working. It is time to try proven policies, background checks, secure storage, red flag laws. I'm not talking about hunting. I'm just trying to keep our kids and communities safe.
So clear distinction there. What did you make of that exchange and just thoughts on that debate overall?
Yeah, Joe, again, that's kind of your generic Republican versus Democratic talking points when it comes to issues of school violence and gun violence. I was really struck by the clash on abortion rights. Michigan is having a big ballot measure whether to enshrine abortion rights in the state. You ended up having Gretchen Whitmer, the incumbent, supporting that measure, Tudor Dixon, the challenger, opposing it. Joe, another high-stakes debate last night, all with less than 2 weeks to go.
All right, Mark Murray, thanks so much for breaking it down. We appreciate it.
And now to the governor's race in New York. Incumbent Governor Kathy Hochul taking on Republican opponent Congressman Lee Zeldin last night in their only scheduled televised debate. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen joins us now. Ron, thanks for being with us. So Hochul had the lead here at one point. It was pretty big, but now the race is tightening. So this debate came at a crucial time. What were the big takeaways, and you think anything here that will move the needle on Election Day?
I guess that remains to be seen. It was a very feisty back and forth, a lot of passion. Both candidates are not well known across the state. Hochul is the governor, but remember, she got the job when Andrew Cuomo had to resign in disgrace, and Lee Zeldin's a congressman from Long Island. So for both of them, this was an opportunity to have a big statewide audience for the first time, perhaps, in this campaign, and to really get their message out to a big audience. So both were very engaged. There were no knockout blows, no major gaffes, and we'll see what the polls do after this. And, of course, what the voters do. Early voting starts this coming weekend here.
One of Zeldin's main campaign issues is crime. I want to ask you about a couple of these issues here, actually, interestingly, similarly to the conversations that Joe just had with Mark a second ago. But crime was brought up multiple times last night, even during a discussion about abortion, actually. What is Zeldin's strategy here, and how did Hochul respond?
It's one of the pillars of his campaign. He's had campaign appearances at crime scenes in the New York subway system, which, of course, has been a big issue in terms of crime. He has been basically saying that on his first day in office that he would declare a state of emergency because of the crime problem that's happening, not just in New York City, but across the state. Here's what the candidates had to say in exchange on the issue of crime. Take a listen.
There are criminals out there who need to pay the consequences for their action instead of the catch-release policies that Kathy Hochul champions.
It is a joke to talk about a crime policy that doesn't include doing something about illegal guns. When you had the chance, as a member of Congress, to stand with other Republicans who finally said enough is enough, you were nowhere to be found, Lee.
She's referring to the congressional vote about gun safety issues that finally did happen after the shooting in Buffalo and in Uvalde. She kept pivoting back to things in Congress that Zeldin didn't support that were bipartisan as she tried to, again, focus on the issue of guns, not just crime. So that was a lot of back and forth on that. But crime has been the issue that the polls suggest has been helping Zeldin make progress as he's trying to narrow the gap between the two of them.
Absolutely. Let's now talk about that other issue I just mentioned, abortion, of course, a hot button topic across the country. How's it playing out here in New York?
Well, this has been Kathy Hochul's issue for the most part, reproductive rights, and she has honed in on that as the campaign has gone on. Zeldin has voted is against the Supreme Court decision on Dobbs, and so here's what they had to say about abortion. Zeldin was trying to maintain his pro-life position, but he seized on an issue about women coming into the state of New York and abortions being paid for by taxpayers to try and get around the issue somewhat. Here's what he had to say about that and Hochul's response. Take a listen.
And I've actually heard from a number of people who consider themselves to be pro-choice, who are not happy hearing that their tax dollars are being used to fund abortions many, many, many states away.
Lee, you can't run from your record. You're the only person standing on this stage whose name right now, not years past, but right now, is on a bill called Life Begins at Conception.
As has been the case in other races across the country, abortion was a bigger issue months ago than it is now. Crime, again, seems to be the issue that's dominating and animating the race here now.
And Ron, last question before I let you go. Another issue that came up is Zeldin's ties to Trump. What impact has that had?
This is a tough one for him because Trump is not popular here in New York, of course. He is a Trump ally. He voted to not certify the results of the election. Hochul cast him as an election denier. Here's what Zeldin had to say about his ties to Trump. Take a listen.
Do you want to see Donald Trump run for president in 2024, Lee Zeldin?
Not even thinking about it. I'm focused on 14 days from today, defeating Kathy Hochul and saving New York State.
Would you vote to certify the results of the 2020 election?
The vote was on 2 states, Pennsylvania and Arizona. The issue still remains today.
He said essentially that he would not vote to certify the results of the election, sticking to that. Hochul was asked if Biden should run for president, and she said in 2024, and she said yes. A lot of national issues throughout throughout the debate here, throughout the campaign here, and that's what's making this race important. But again, this has been Kathy Hochul's race to lose, if you will. She's been ahead by double digits. There were a couple of polls last week that made it put it in the single digits, which is why there's more attention focused on this now. Yeah. But again, New York is a big, big blue state, and it seems that Hochul still has a lead, although it's just how big it is or small it is, of course, the voters will decide.
Ron Allen, thank you so much. We'll be watching.
As Election Day approaches, many poll workers are coming under pressure. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander has more on why some have decided to quit.
Angie Jones never thought she would become a poll worker.
I voted, as most Americans do, but I'd never really been involved in the political process.
But the 2016 election changed all of that.
After that election happened, that I needed to be part of the solution.
Her solution, training to become a poll manager in Fulton County, Georgia.
People who come to your polls and say, I don't trust this process, what do you want them to know about the work that you do?
Well, first of all, come join us. Take the training. If people would understand the process more, I feel like they would be less fearful that their votes are not secure.
Angie has worked every election since 2018, but none like Georgia's 2021 runoff that gave Democrats control of the Senate.
After the 2020 election, did you notice a change?
Immediately, I noticed a change. I had a lot of voters that came in angry, distrustful.
And election workers were increasingly targeted by conspiracy theories, like Shay Moss and her mother, Ruby Freeman, who also worked in Fulton County.
It's turned my life upside down.
According to the Brennan Center for Justice, 1 in 5 election workers say they are unlikely to serve through 2024. 1 in 6 have personally experienced threats. Angie says she will never forget asking a friend to sign up.
She said no. She was afraid. And I remember she said to me, people will say things to me that they would never say to you.
Because she's a woman of color.
Because she's a woman of color.
Georgia was at the center of efforts to overturn the 2020 election, something election official Gabriel Sterling called dangerous.
It has all gone too far. All of it.
Are you concerned there could be similar threats this time around?
I'm sure there will be. You have to be aware of it, but you can't over-prepare for it.
Did you ever think about just walking away?
No, never. Never. My responsibility is to do everything that I can do within my power at that precinct to protect the vote.
Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
And with candidates hitting the home stretch, Meet the Press now is hitting the road. Chuck Todd will be talking to voters, candidates, and officials today on a special edition of MTP Now, live from Pittsburgh. Coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern.
And turning now to the latest on the January 6th investigation, NBC News has now learned that Hope Hicks, who served as a top advisor to former President Trump, has interviewed with the House committee investigating the insurrection. That's according to a source familiar with the matter. Now, Hicks served in multiple senior roles in the Trump White House for much of his presidency, but left her job as counselor to the president just 6 days after January 6th. This interview also comes just days after the committee subpoenaed the former president himself. For more, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa. Ali, good to have you with us on this. So do we have any idea what Hicks said during her testimony yesterday and what the committee was hoping to hear from her in the first place?
Yeah, good morning, Savannah. Unfortunately, no official comment from Hope Hicks or the January 6th committee as far as what she was able to tell the committee. But we do know that Hope Hicks was one of the earliest advisors to Trump and his family, going so far back as 2015 when he was mulling a run for the presidency. And as you mentioned at the top there, while she did leave the White House, she came back and was part of former President Trump's inner circles during this critical period of time that the January 6th committee is interested in, this period of time between Election Day and January 6th. The committee likely asking her questions about Trump's thinking, Trump's communications during that time, because reportedly Hope Hicks told former President Trump repeatedly that he had lost the election. Now, remember, the January 6th committee's whole argument during this over a year-long investigation has been to prove that former President Trump was at the center of the effort to overturn the election, that he was to blame for the January 6th attack on the Capitol. So that's definitely something that the committee likely asked her about. How forthcoming she was with the committee is still under question, because she has testified before a congressional committee in 2016, and wasn't very forthcoming. She invoked her right to executive privilege during that time. Of course, she doesn't work in the White House anymore, so she wouldn't be under the same restrictions this time. How forthcoming she was with the committee is still a big question we do have.
Now, Ali, this all comes after the January 6th committee held its last scheduled hearing before the midterms. Where does the investigation stand right now, especially with less than 2 weeks to go to the election?
Yeah, 2 weeks to go to the election. And remember, this committee is only active as a committee until a new Congress is sworn in January. And they still have a lot of things to cross off of their to-do list. Remember, the committee still doesn't know whether former President Trump will comply with this subpoena for testimony on November 14th for documents that members have said may be even more enlightening than that testimony on November 4th. And the committee is trying to wrap this all up, like I said, by January. They're trying to use their time wisely. The big question now is, if Trump doesn't comply with that subpoena, what will the committee plan to do in that short amount of time? They have the option to refer a contempt of Congress criminal referral to the Justice Department, similar to what we saw with Steve Bannon, or they could use this time to refer what members have called other criminal contempt referrals for other crimes that they say that they can prove Trump has committed. What they do with this remaining time is still a big question we have.
All right, Ali, Rafa, thank you so much.
In Ukraine this morning, at least 2 people have died after Russian missiles hit a gas station in the city of Dnipro. The violence comes as Russian forces in Kherson brace for what one Ukrainian official called, quote, the heaviest of battles. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley has the latest from Kyiv.
Good morning, guys. Ukraine passed another night with some Russian bombardment in the eastern part of the country, this time in the city of Dnipro, where 2 people were killed in Russian attacks. And there have been continued to be rolling blackouts throughout this country after nearly 2 weeks of constant Russian attacks on electricity installations. Now, this country is still bracing at this moment for 2 major events that really are just about to happen, both of them very ominous. The first one, and I think you've heard about this, that news of the dirty bomb. Just over the weekend, Russia called defense ministers from throughout the world and sort of projected this notion that it was the Ukrainians who are trying to create a nuclear device and to detonate it here in Ukraine against their own people, and then to blame it on the Russians in a kind of false flag attack. Now, this has been, met with wide opprobrium from governments throughout the world, basically all of them calling it a Russian lie and a pretext for Russia's own escalation of the war. Now, what we've been hearing from the state energy company, and one of the state energy companies, is that it looks as though the Russians are digging into some nuclear waste in the eastern city of Zaporizhia. That has put pay to the claims of the Ukrainians that it is the Russians who are planning on creating a dirty bomb, detonating it, and blaming it on the Ukrainians. It's a confusing situation, but a very troubling one for folks here. Now, all that is happening as Ukrainian forces prepare to retake the southern city of Kherson. That was one of the cities that was the first to fall to Russian forces. Now, that city has almost emptied out completely. I've been speaking to some people down there. They say that there's just an ominous sort of calm as Russian troops have vacated the city and have demanded that civilians, as many as possible, leave the city as well. It sounds as though they are prepared, the Russians and the Ukrainians, for a blistering battle in the southern city of Kherson, one that might not even leave that city standing. Guys?
All right, Matt Bradley. Matt, thank you so much.
And now to your morning news now weather. A lot of people are breaking out the rain boots this morning.
I don't know if I have rain boots. Do you have rain boots?
No, I have snow boots.
Yeah, I do too. All right. Meteorologist
But
Michelle
remember those
Grossman,
hunter
help
boots,
us.
right? Those really cute. Right? They were like
really wanted
huge.
those.
I don't think I ever wore them in the rain, but I wore them to the fun festival stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Fall festival stuff. But you definitely need the rain in spots.
But we digress.
And where are those boots anyway? They're pink. Yeah. I'll wear them next Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah, they're really cute. All right. So rain in the Northeast, rain in the Northwest, and then we're looking at really dry conditions in the middle of the country. So here is that rain in the Northeast. We had that slow-moving cold front. It's taking forever to move its way along the East Coast, and it will finally exit tomorrow morning. But before that, we're looking at the cold front stretching from the Great Lakes all the way down to the Southeast. Along this front, we're looking at heavy rain. Where you see these brighter colors, that's where we're looking at the heaviest rain. We're not expecting severe weather like we saw the past 2 days, but still could see a thunderstorm or two. The main threat here will be some wind along that front and also some heavy rain. So as we zoom in a little closer, we also have a secondary area of low pressure. That's going to bring some heavy rain to portions of Maine. We could see even 3 inches, some flash flooding in spots as we go throughout tonight into tomorrow morning. So heavy rain in New England today. That cold front stretches to the southeast. It moves slowly and will finally exit tomorrow morning. Generally, we're looking at 1, 2, 3 inches of rain, most of that falling in portions of Maine. Bangor, Portland, along the coast here, we are looking at the heaviest amounts there. Now, as we go throughout the day here, we're looking at some really warm temperatures ahead of this front. So we've been seeing this all week long where we're looking at that cold front ahead of it. It's really warm. Back behind it, we're looking at frigid air. So that warm East Coast, temperatures well above normal once again, into the 60s, into the 70s, about 20 degrees above normal for this time of year in spots. Burlington, Vermont, we're looking at 73, 64 today in Boston, 66. In Buffalo, 70s in D.C., also in Norfolk and down to Raleigh. We're going to keep that warm air in place for another day before we return to more seasonal temperatures. And then back behind this front, we've been talking about this all week long. This front is really bringing in some very cold air from Canada. It's dropping those temperatures about 30 degrees. So we're looking at 30s and 40s, 50s, 32 degrees tomorrow in Telluride. We're looking at 36 in Jackson. That's going to set the stage for some snow tonight into tomorrow. We could see 8 inches of snow in some spots in the Cascades and also into the Rockies. So the West stays unsettled. It's been settled all week. We're looking at a series of storms. It's called the atmospheric river. We've heard about that. So it's just water coming off the Pacific. So we're going to keep it unsettled for the next few days. Today, the rain and mountain snow for parts of the Rockies. Another Pacific storm moves into Washington tomorrow, and that's where we're going to see that snow. So where you see the blue in portions of Utah, also New Mexico, the Four Corners, you have a chance of seeing some snowflakes. Lower elevation rainfall totals. The heaviest rain falling in portions of Washington, so Seattle, you could see some heavy rain as well. And where you see the pinks and the really pretty colors, the blues, we're looking at that highest elevation snow. This is tomorrow also. We're going to see that front moving off to the east, that second one, and that's going to kind of tap into some Gulf moisture. So it's going to bring the chance of severe weather. Not today, but tomorrow. Winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. Could see some hail and the chance of a few tornadoes. So here's the snapshot for today. That heavy rain in portions of the Northeast. Sunshine returns to the middle of the country. Looking really good there, guys. Temperatures in the 60s, 70s, 80s in portions of Texas, and dry with some sunshine.
Halloween weather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, look at that heavy
Wear
rain.
the lightest costume you have.
Exactly.
60s, 70s. Ugh. All right. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Michelle. See you in a little bit.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.